friends, it's me, Nina, and I'm here with a super awesome special YouTube video today. I thought I would show you all my skills in astrology, and I decided to create some made-up charts for the characters of the Games of Thrones based on several things. Honestly, this video is probably going to be about an hour, maybe an hour and 30 minutes long. I'm going to try to talk as fast as I can, but I also know that there's probably a lot of people that are interested in the parallels that I have created. And so to kind of start, I'll definitely talk a little bit about me. I have been studying astrology. I mean, I think we all studied astrology like apathetically, reading horoscopes when we were little kids. But I took it more seriously in the beginning of 2018, the end of 2017, and then of course through my work as a healer and everything, I ended up getting my Ashtark records, and it shows that I was an astrologer in a past life, as well as very familiar with just the ancient ways of using astrology, period. You know, some astrologers can really only formulate or create very simple, basic concepts and understandings, whereas what I'm able to see is what we used back in the day. And I mean, you know, BC, even before the TV show was written, you know, in the ancient times before the patriarchy, you know, when astrology was super common for everybody and really enjoyable for everybody. That's pretty much the time that I was thriving. And so as an ancient sentient being, I thought for, you know, fun, I would pull up the astrology charts or I guess I say make up astrology charts, because these aren't real. And I don't want anybody to think that these are the real charts. I fully understand that, you know, Game of Thrones is set in like 180. And so it would be very hard to pinpoint exactly what was going on there. And so what I based it on were George R. Martin's chart himself, because I think I was on Twitter and we were all doing this thing where it said show somebody, you know, with the same sun and moon as you, and I have the same sun and moon as R. Martin to the day. Actually, he and I are both born September 20th, so we both have that 27-degree Virgo sign. And I based that on the fact that he had, you know, published the books in the early 90s, therefore was likely writing them well before that, or at least had, you know, those concepts and those ideas coming to him well before that. And so when I went to look up the astrology of the past, I was purposely looking for signs that are similar to today's while being just different enough to really put some excitement in our lives. And so I'm going to kind of slow down on talking here just so that way I can share some photos. One second. Sorry, there are a lot of charts, and I want to try to get them in the order that I want to discuss them. And maybe, let's see. Okay. When I mean there's a lot of charts, I should probably explain a little more too. I did pretty much all of the main characters. Oh man, I should have paused the video and had these more ready. And the Lannisters. Then the Stark. Okay. And so I do have it written down somewhere else, like who could potentially have what, but I didn't really dive as much information in as what I did here. So first and foremost, as we look at all of the charts that I've pulled up and everybody that we're going to look at today, I want you to know that I based all of this energy off of George R. R. Martin's natal chart himself. And so because the predominant signs here, and I'm gonna draw all over this, because the predominant signs were Virgo, Aries, Libra, Leo, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Cancer, Leo, Taurus, more Taurus down here, even the Aquarius in his midheaven. Because these were all his signs, I have to believe that, you know, as he thought of these characters, they were still being influenced by these signs. And so I went ahead and did all of the characters, and I also did the basic wheel charts for seasons 1 and 8. And so in the idea that season 1, I just kind of count the outer planets for this one and for this opportunity, just because those inner planets are so finicky. And, you know, back then they had long winters and long summers, and now we have like the true season so we can see everything. So there's like a lot of differences. And so I don't want to get too carried away on where the sun and whatnot is on these. But what I want to pull away from is that Jupiter was in Leo, the Capricorn degree. And so it's giving a lot of like this power grab, this idea that power is transferable, or really it's also like establishing a legacy. I do think that, you know, I should pull up the actual premiere dates of these, because these are the quote unquote canon shots of what would have been happening should the years be accurate. And so I feel like I'm even getting ahead of myself by trying to explain where I put the stars canonly. And so I think I can start with Jon Snow here and recognize that his Pluto is in Aries, which is kind of this creation where I wanted to start the show, because as a pleasure point, because you have to remember season 1 starts Jon Snow's 16. And so what I basically did was create or look around until I found Aries, and then put it at whatever year I decided John was, I put everyone else outside of it. And I don't know why I chose 9 degrees. I think it was just like, you know, first time. And I really just wanted him to have a lot of Libra placements for his diplomacy, for his insight, for his ability to, you know, make amends, be a good leader. I also did a lot of full moon and new moon energies amongst all of the charts, just because that is something that is fairly common, or like a common experience for people who climb their way to the top and get to a high point of fame. They're not always new or full moon, but very often that is expressed. So the other thing I wanted to point out was, because I made Jon Snow's Pluto so early in Aries, it ends up giving it this perfect Pluto transitional power exchange places, where Pisces is where all of the adults, quote unquote, anybody over 30 is for the show. And so this is Cersei Lannister's, same thing with Jaime Lannister, and even Tyrion Lannister all have the Pisces Plutos. So they are coming from an old world as we enter into a new world. And then, of course, like I was saying, I had pulled the transits. I do believe that the new world, like by the end of season 8, you're dealing with a Pluto transit, which is that transfer of power, which is the worry of the long night. You know, I could have seen it as like Robert's Rebellion being when this like transit happened, because Pluto would have transited. Oops. So Pluto, maybe, yes. Pluto would have transited out of Pisces into Aries, and that would have been Robert's Rebellion, so to speak, just to kind of create this energy shifting. Robert's rebellion lasted a really long time. There were children born in between, on top of, during. And so, I mean, it's like, it ends up being like quite a year's difference. But this isn't actually supposed to be historically accurate. This is me in my own free time. And so, yes, this is what I do in my free time. And I've decided that my YouTube should definitely be just the things that I find curious that other people might find curious as well. You know, I do this for like murder documentaries because I find that to be really, really interesting. I don't know, maybe it's me. But for Pluto, for this is kind of like I envision like Daenerys' death in season 8 being surrounded by this Pluto and this transfer of power, because we also have to remember in my world that I love so dearly, I have made Daenerys a 29-degree Aries moon. And so with Pluto right on top of her energy, I definitely created a reason to have the release. So I'm going to slow down a little bit because that was kind of how I talk about where and why I put this in. And it ends up being like 1831 is the year that I created for John to be born. And so by all and any means, this is not official. This is not real. And I would love if George R. R. Martin like sat with me and chit chat about it because we're born on the same day. We could call it brunch, but I don't know because I'll never know. And I have to just make this up. You know, a lot of astrologers kind of come out doing the Kardashians when they do families, but I was just rewatching the Game of Thrones, and I thought it would be fun and interesting to do this. You know, I think the only other show that I did this with, like intimately, was Scandal. I think I sat down and I made a chart for her, but you know, she was born in the 80s, and so it wasn't very hard to find Olivia Pope's chart. You know, maybe I'll do that one day online, but I'm doing this one because I also have my family tree readings on sale. So we do 4 family members charts. Normally it's $150, but because it's the holiday season and we keep on gathering with our family, or at the very least thinking of our family, I would love to just have everybody get one. And so they are on sale for $111 until after, I don't even know, actually. I don't know. I know it doesn't actually end until the end of the year, but it just keeps on changing its price. And so I believe it's 111 until the 3rd of December, and then it'll go down again, just so that way we can, you know, keep on playing around, keep on having fun, and then it'll just go down for like the Christmas season. So that's one of the reasons I'm doing this. And then the other reason I'm doing this is because I think that Game of Thrones is a very eerie way to talk about death, but a very open and public way to talk about death. I also thought it'd be interesting to take on what life and death and the power of, you know, astrology does. And you know that I offer life and death readings also online, available. I think those ones are $79. And so if you are either surrounded by death or fascinated by death, I do invite people to have those readings because it's just open space to talk about things outside of us. And so enough chat about me, let's jump into this chart. So, nephew and auntie, yes, this is full of spoilers. If you have not seen the Game of Thrones, or you don't know anything about the Game of Thrones, or you stopped watching after season 6, just stop watching this video. Go watch the rest of the series, because I am talking about the complexities from the beginning of the show to the end of the show, and how we see an 8-year level of growth for the characters themselves. So this is also getting in tangent with, like, you know, some different transit energies and other growth energies. So Jon Snow and Daenerys Targaryen are the chosen ones, quote unquote. Daenerys and Jon are both the same age, which kind of just told me, as far as what we saw in George Martin's books, because he has this Aries moon, I just felt like his 2 main characters absolutely also had to have this Aries moon. And so I went ahead and started with Jon Snow being born in the fall and Daenerys being born in the winter, but actually early spring. So they're literally 6 months apart, 6 months and one day apart. They end up both having the Aries moons. Jon sits at 22 degrees because I think his emotional moon, his emotional well-being, all of his energy is carried more in a sophisticated leader type of way. He knows that he has to struggle with this. The moon's energy immediately leaning into, the who's, the what's, and the whys as far as like mother, and him having that 22 degrees says, you had a father and a father. He really never had that maternal energy that he was seeking and searching. And you'll notice that throughout the chart, he doesn't sit with any water energy. And you kind of see that he's not the most emotional of guys. Like, I don't even know if he cries. Like, he's apologetic, he's heartwarming, he's well balanced, but he's not pouring into as much as the other characters were and do. And then for Daenerys, I saw that, I think she was born more early. She's also storm born, and that implies, the storms. And I'm not one of those astrologers that look up what kind of climate lives in the Ireland area, but I thought there's this great idea where the moon would technically be at just the smallest bit of a crescent, even if it was visible. And the Aries energy of the full moon, or excuse me, the new moon, the Aries moon in general, bringing in a storm with this child's birth, it just made a lot of sense to me. And that's definitely where those two come from. And then hers being at 29 degrees, leaning into, a life of power, a life of destiny, a life of being just in the eye. And we all know, at least I'm hoping everybody that watches is familiar with degree theory and how 29 is a degree of fame, along with the degrees 5 and 17, where when you go back to John's, he doesn't have any of these degrees inherently because was never his plan. It was never his knowledge. It was never with him knowing. He just is a king, And so she also has the gossip around the world where everybody's always talking about her, whispering about her, always trying to kill her, all of that jazz that coming off of the moon energy as well. And then you'll notice I have, if we drop down to the ascendant, because I know we love our big threes in quick conversation, John sitting in Leo at 26 degrees. That's why he has such great hair. Okay, that was the only reason I put it there, and that's a half truth. I actually did it so that way he could have Virgo in the first house and his Aries energy in the 8th house. And so that's actually why I picked a Leo rising. I mean, Kit Harrison's hair. I'm just a lovely man indeed. But further than that, more than just a character, at 26 degrees, it's still this degree of leader, but it still has a handful of selfishness to it. I probably could have bumped that up to 27 degrees, just so that way we can add more energy about his brother and his brotherhood. But that's where the 11 degree Virgo is coming into play, in my opinion, just because at 11 degrees, creating a brotherhood, creating that family grouping. It also puts just a lot of energy into his space on the wall and with his friends. That's where Jupiter and Uranus are sitting in Aquarius. And if you remember the late 90s, you'll know that Aquarius and Neptune are in the same places they were in the late 90s. Well, I think Neptune's a little faster here than it was in the 90s, but nonetheless, because of that energy, I do foresee, more of Jon Snow being written according to quote unquote times. Because again, these books were published in the late 90s. So as Jon Snow develops more and more of his character and his understanding, and as R. R. Martin continues to write and create interesting ideas based on the world and what's happening around him, all of these little things are queuing off as well. And then you'll notice Saturn sits in Virgo for Jon Snow, and it also, let me just back up. Sorry, I took notes like I read them, but R. R. Martin also has a Virgo Saturn, and so that's the other reason I kind of gave him that energy, that chart, that place. And so if we're all keeping up, I hope we are. If not, just press pause. So with Daenerys, on the other hand, I have her at 25 degrees in Pisces, and a lot of people don't take Pisces seriously enough for me. I mean, they are still that mutable, psychotic energy that I absolutely love / adore / live for, you know. And then they're also, they have a lot of power around knowing the beginning and the end. You know, there's a lot of freedom and freedom fighter energy within this. And then since her sun sits in the 6th house, it's her energy to serve. You know, a lot of great queens and kings who won't get in front of the battle lines, won't join themselves, won't put themselves in these positions, but she does. She gets up and does it. She does what she has to. And then also something that I kind of just want to take note is her Jupiter and her Uranus are conjunct at 12 degrees in her 5th house. And that, in my opinion, is what makes her the mother of dragons, simply because I read the 5th house as your maternal energy and the 4th house is your paternal energy. And so when the 5th house is exposed and then 12 degrees in my study is a symbol of rebirth, as well as a symbol of life and or death. And then in Aquarius, seeing things that are beyond us. A lot of, you know, New World Order energies sit there. And so Daenerys in her 5th house, creating the dragons to bring in a new world, you know, Uranus as the individual, Jupiter as the opportunity. She is literally the only one capable of doing this. And of course, what I thought was really cool about them being 6 months apart is that Jon Snow ends up also with a 12-degree Aquarius, his in his 6th house, which means he has the great opportunity to serve amongst life and death for the New World Order. Does that mean that's why he kills her? Probably. I could take it. If anybody wants to converse or comment, I'm definitely in agreement with you. And so back to Danny. Also, something that I really enjoy pointing out and looking at is her Gemini Mars at that 0 degree, kind of giving all the power to Gemini, and then the rest of that power runs into her 9th house. And I think that's where her ability to communicate is really coming from, and not just communicate, like say words, but she learns Dothraki in like a year or something, probably less than that. She speaks, you know, a couple of different languages, Valerian, the common tongue, all of those. And so it's so interesting that every time she travels and goes somewhere, she also takes on the energy of where she is. You know, I love how even her clothes change, even though this isn't about the way she dresses. We know that we find that in Venus's energy, but just in her Gemini and her ability to adapt where she travels. And I mean, I know it sounds weird, but like there are some people who you could go put them in the snow and you're like, where's your jacket? But Daenerys, when she's in the north, she's wearing this beautiful white coat, and it still looks like a dragon because it has just a little bit of her, but then not really. You know, while she's in Marine, she starts wearing dresses like Marine. While she's in Dothraki, she's wearing their clothes. It's because she has this innate and divine energy to blend in and to become one with the people, despite, or and more like in honestly, it's almost like encouraged, like gleefully. It's almost happy that she's able to do it because it's another way to gain their trust. And also just learning to speak the language of the land you want to conquer is going to make that Mars so much more powerful. And so we see her as a powerful conqueress, but it's actually her ability to become one with the people that gives her that strength. As well as having her Aries in 8th house. That's kind of that willingness to just kill on sight while also save on sight. You know, she has a lot of deep emotions about how people should be treated. She transformed an entire city of Marine out of slavery just because, you know, that Piscean energy that she holds and that ability and that desire for equality, you know, the Libra energy of this world is very much so diplomatic. As much as we want to run into its love energy, it's very diplomatic energy. It's a we are equals. It's after I see myself, I see you, and I can't see you any less than I see myself. And so she creates and writes out, and I keep saying create. I don't even realize that it's sitting in her 5th house, but she creates all of this energy onward and forward. And then because her Saturn is at 26 degrees in Leo, I do believe that means that her stubbornness essentially kills her. We have to realize that they never get to John and Danny's Saturn returns, essentially, and we jump in right at the end of Tyrion's. And so when I get to his story, I'll definitely tell you about that. But for the most part, the last little bits are like Pluto at the 8th degree in the 7th house. I kind of see it as your lover will kill you. And what does Jon Snow do? I'm just kidding. That's her nephew. That was like probably the worst story. Like there was so much, like it was okay because like I believe that Jon deserved to be, you know, a real person and a real boy, but why'd they sleep together? Is it because of the Lannisters? Like the whole show's covered in incest. Like, do I need to go back to R.R. Martin's chart and figure out what his little pickle is? Because another thing, so, and then from Jon Snow's, he has to learn lessons, travel far, travel abroad, kill abroad, deal with people further than him, deal with other energies that don't match his own. And then also he's just leading others. He can literally lead people he's never met before because there's an immediate sense of trust there. And then also that 3rd house selenium doesn't hurt. He's really good with his words. He really knows how to make conversations go. I'll also note that his retrograded Venus is probably why he has a terrible love life. His first girlfriend dies and his second girlfriend's is on. So that's always fun and awkward. And then, of course, if we do account for the synastry between the two of them, air Mars's with the fire moon, chef's kiss. We love that Libra to Pisces energy. It's so refreshing. It's so cute. They really, you know, can ebb and flow off of each other. When one wants to be gentle, the other can be brute. When one wants to be brute, the other can be gentle. Really good energy there. And again, they're just 6 months apart. And so it's amazing how much change can happen over the course of 6 months and what we all have to offer and what we can all do. And so that's all I have for those two. I have thought about chopping this up, but I think I'm just going to try to run it the whole time. And please forgive me if it's really, really long, but I'm going as fast as I can. So I'm actually not going to do Tyrion first, simply because I love talking about the twins. You know, the fact that Jaime and Cersei are twins and they just frolic around like that is pure chaotic energy to me. But I also loved it because it gave me time to sit and think and ponder. At what point could two energies be so much alike yet somehow worlds apart? And I decided to go with the Pisces moon to an Aquarius moon. Originally, I was going to, because I always felt like Jaime had a Pisces moon. He's just really soft. He has this like cuteness about him. He can be absolutely lethal when he needs to be, but for the most part, likes telling jokes, is really lighthearted, never really interested in finding himself something else or something more, just very simple in that look. And we all know how, you know, as complex as Pisces folks are, they're still just little simple cutie pies. And then at that 0 degree, staying very true and very pure to that Piscean, you know, going with the flow. Wherever the flow goes, I want to go to. He doesn't really put up much of a fight. And then he also defends, he has a soft heart and a soft spot for his brother that, Cersei is just completely in arms to, does not have at all. And so in Cersei's chart, assuming that she was born first, which she just gives, I came out first energy, like you just know, the way she carries herself, the way she acts. And I also give her a full moon-esque energy. You'll notice that some of the other full moons that I had given out, or new moons, they were exact, like in the very breath, in the very moment. And then others were similar apart. So of course, Cersei's was apart because I wanted them to have really close charts, but just an hour's worth of difference did all of this. And then, of course, as the rising sign, I also thought it'd be very interesting to kind of make her emotions cold and her entire self-perceived personality cold, which of course means equal and opposite in the descendant mark, puts her at a 29-degree Leo energy. And so, if ascendant's how you see yourself, then the descendant is how others see you. So she was literally the queen since she was walking. She was woke up and just decided she was the one and only queen that there could be, and that there will ever be. She really put her foot down there. And I can't help but support it. Like, we all watch the show, so we all know it is what it is. And so hers being directly on top of each other, putting her moon in her first house, puts everything in her power, as well as we recognize moon and mother very often. And so putting her children in her path, in her power, having the desire to control everything about her children, so to speak, not 100%, but in that same energy, in that same essence. And then when we slide it over, oops, too far, to Jamie, then we're looking at that Pisces moon, and then the fact that it's in the 12th house. And in my studies, we read the 12th house as the house of the womb, and what goes on in the womb. It kind of immediately says that, Jamie is always in his womb. And because his Pluto, not conjunct, but still in his 12th house as he draws his power from the moon, really not the moon, the womb, that means he really is getting everything from his sister and everything that they shared together and everything that was developed one way or another. I also gave him an Aries rising because I wanted him to have the quote unquote perfect world view, of course, because like Gemini sits in the 3rd house, Sagittarius sits in the 9th house. Like in that essence, in that energy, I wanted him to have, for the most part, a sound mind, a common mind, a very level-headed man, somebody that you could technically, have lots of words with, and you never feel like you were being misunderstood or misrepresented. And that, I think, is just like some really good headstrong energy for him. As well as putting it, like I had said earlier, the Leo degrees are 5, 17, and 29. So of course, amongst both of them, I had to put a ton of degrees in there. And so, Jamie gets just the Pluto at 17, the true node, which I do not talk about at all, not even in my personal readings sometimes. If I talk about them, it's because I assume they have a great deal of importance in the moment, and I think there's just too many other planets to sit and play with the North Node as well. But the North Node and his ascendant all sitting at those 29 degrees, kind of putting him in this position of fame, so to speak. And what do we all know him for? One, being a Kingslayer, which is something he did, and then also just being very talented, very young, and what that was able to do for him and around him, and just being able to wield the sword. And then when I discuss Cersei's, she definitely has a few more just because she is the queen, And so Cersei gets the moon at 29, and then her ascendant, and her Pluto in node. So it's, excuse me, it's just one more. But even then, putting her moon there puts her emotionally at a sense of power, respect, and expectation towards, you know, who I am. It also says that her greatest accomplishments happen when she's older, when she's dealt with more things than what she has dealt with now. And so that's super interesting too. And then, of course, because we're all dying to talk about it, that super weird position and all of us questioning as to why was incest that deep in the story. But Venus at 24 degrees, 24 I see again in relation to 12, thus in relation to the moon, thus falling in love with who you were in the womb with, that Cancerian energy as far as, you know, only my family I can trust, only my family can be around. Technically, somebody that we don't like, whose initials are, oh, those aren't even his initials, hold on. These are his initials. Has a very similar position, and we know how he treats his daughter, and that was so weird. And so once I saw that, I kind of like did that nod of, yeah, we'll just accept that. And so in the 5th house, however, something kind of is so weird to me to think out loud. But again, I'm just being an organic astrologer and I made all this stuff up anyway. It's because it's in the 5th house, the only person who would have seen what they were up to would have been the mother, not the 4th house where that holds the father, but the 5th house with the mother. And since Tyrion, you know, marked the mom, nobody stopped them. Cersei goes on a long conversation with her father. Like, you didn't know? How did you not know? We were doing it the whole time in front of you. Like, if you looked at us, you would have known. And he never knew, and that's most likely why. I think I'm going to pause on the twins for a spell and go ahead and jump into what I've created for Tyrion. And I gave Tyrion the exact same degree, sign, birthday as George Martin, just because you could tell a mile away. I mean, just in his, you know, personal planets alone, 1, 2, 3, 4 third house connections. It's like the child who never shuts up, you know, and he never does shut up. And so it felt very natural for me to put him here. I gave him a Leo ascendant because, again, great hair. Mwah, chef's kiss. But in that realm of honesty, he kind of got that Leo ascendant because I wanted all of the Lannisters to kind of hold a Leo placement strong enough where that lion ideology just made sense. You know, I never wrote up Tyrion Lannisters, but I know I gave him like a general idea of where his chart could have been. Let me see. Oh yeah, see, I said he was like a Sagittarius sun with a Capricorn moon, but I didn't want to sit there and go back another generation just to tackle his chart and his ideologies. But know that, you know, there's Leo somewhere in there because of his family line, his family history, etc., etc. I don't know, it could have been a Saturn for all I know. But I didn't make him a chart, I just made the kids a chart, and they're not even kids. So to Tyrion, though, all of that conversational energy is equal and opposite to the Pluto, which here we see as a place to draw power, to draw strength. And in the 9th house at 22 degrees, he really finds his wisdom, finds himself. You know, if I could say I drink and I know things as a planetary description, it would be Pluto at 22 degrees in Pisces in the 9th house. Like, all of that was just giving, you know, well, I drink and I know things. That's my job. That's what I do. And that's my strength. You know, you also have to recognize that, you know, even his midheaven, back to that 5, 17, and 29 thing for degrees, you know, Tyrion ends up having a ton of, doesn't even have a ton? I don't know. Let me see. Because I see the 1 in his midheaven. And then, no, okay, so he just has the 1, but I remember wanting him to have a lot more Libra placements than not. And we receive Libra in 7, 19, and then there isn't a third option for Libra. And so we have 19, 7, a few times, 19 in the moon. I did that for sure, because he also is quite a lover. He's quite a lover. He has a lot of energy geared towards appreciation, love, validation, seeking and finding a partner. I will make the comment that we jump into the story right after his Saturn return, which when he tells a story about like the first woman he married and how she was just, a fraud, basically, and he was a fool to it, because that 18 degrees is exactly the energy of Virgo, and we subsequently kind of see Virgo as self-doubt, misassurance, self not believing in oneself. And so in Aquarius, like, how are you fooled by the people into this marriage? And then even when, that energy comes back around in his next marriage, and even when, he kills his father in the end, the Virgo taking out the Saturn, it was all these energies just destined to kind of do what he had to do to survive. And then the other great thing that I love here is just all of the Gemini and the Sagittarius energy, because again, it's based on the wisdom, the self-prophecy wisdom, so to speak. So 27 and 15 and 3 all go to Gemini, and then 21 and 9 go to Sag. Draw these so we remember what we're looking at. And so for him, he has 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 5. 5 energies within those. Let me double check. Oh, and then there's that 3. I did forget that one. Yeah, and so for the most part, his energy is based on that balance of wisdom and letting that wisdom keep him alive, give him strength, give him power. Also, with all of the Gemini energy, you have to see that as siblings, family, what your siblings and your family members may do to you or may want from you. And you can kind of see definitely in his whole life how his family just didn't really want him. So stressful. Thank God this is a TV show. Otherwise, I'd feel a little bad for talking so much shit. And it's also interesting. So just to jump back to the twins, because I can only talk about Tyrion for so long. He was my least favorite character. He had like the most screen time, but he was my least favorite character only because he was giving that Virgo sun and moon energy where you're really, really good. And then 2 mistakes later, you just don't believe in yourself anymore. And that's exactly what happened to Tyrion. After, he just didn't believe in himself anymore. He just wasn't a fun and interesting character. And I respect it as, Virgo energy goes, but that's why he's my least favorite. And then also with Tyrion being a Virgo moon and then his brother being a Pisces moon creates that softness amongst them that is not at all present with Cersei and her own energy. Also amongst the twins, because their Mars are in different places, it's kind of like, what did you do during all of your lessons? And she learned wisdom, whereas Jamie learned strength, brute force, death. And so like, what did your father teach you kind of thing? Father taught me how to fight. And then we say father simply because Saturn being dad also in Sagittarius. And then father also teaching him how to learn. That was a big moment in the show. Him telling him like, oh, my dad made me read for 20 hours a day, yada, yada, yada. And then both of them being at 20 degrees, just being, father deceased, father moved, father left. For Cersei, father taught her legacy, taught her knowledge, belonghood. Every lesson was received. And so for this, I kind of see like the 2 twins showing 2 different sides of Tywin, showing 2 different sides of Tywin, just because, Jamie's energy is giving this idea that everything that he learned was literal education and how to fight, how to be a good warrior, how to defend things. And so if we watch Jamie in, his military combat, that's us watching his father. And then if we watch Cersei and her legacy and her ability to watch, learn, govern, etc., that's going to be their lessons on them. So when I read family tree readings, which is what I really invite people to come down and do, like that's why I'm reading these and all, I'll be able to tell you what your family members passed down hereditarily to you, as well as like astrologically to you. And this is one of those really great windows for it. Just because I'm short on time, I would be more than happy to do an extended version where I just break down the singular house families and where they sit and where they lie. But because I'm running low on time, I'm going to go ahead and jump on to the starts. Woo! I haven't even changed my notes. I tell you, I take these gorgeous notes. I really put my time into it, and then I don't read them. So I do have Brandon Starks on here. Again, because of time, I'm not going to go completely in depth into his. In fact, I might just address his first, simply because from the early episodes, anything before he became the third-eyed raven, he was just a young boy with a lot of responsibility really fast. Even with his Virgo moon, it was giving him this opportunity to listen, to pay attention. I wanted him to have more adventurous energy. And so I only gave him adventurous energy in his ascendant sign because the way he loved to climb, the way he loved to explore, And so I felt like that was such a personal experience to and of him. It wasn't that much of the story's experience simply because he got wounded so early. And so that's why I didn't give him any action signs within those personal charts, because he has that fall, and then his adventures are just coming from a different angle, a different point of view, so to speak. And he's still adventurous, and he does spend a lot of his time learning, but learning at a sacrifice. A lot of astrologers, like what Nikolai, I forget his last name, but Nikolai T something, they say about the degrees 18 and 22, and those are the degrees of life or death. And you'll notice Jon Snow has some of those 18 and 22 degree things, and just putting his ascendant at 18 while his moon is also in Virgo, it just felt really right for me. And again, an 8th house moon, I give a lot of people an 8th house moon, just because emotionally you have to be ready to transform in the crazy ways that these characters did, and how they had to figure out those worlds and whatnot. And then also I think because his Mercury is retrograded. Sometimes that Mercury retrograde in like a normal person shows up as like a stutter, or a little bit of ADD, or not having a very clear forward-thinking mind. For this one, I kind of give it the energy of him being able to do the wog, or warg is I think it's what it's called. Where he steps into the other animals. It's kind of saying that his mind wasn't exclusively his mind when things were happening. Also a sense of possession, body, being able to change out of one's body into another's body, being able to think like another person, unlike another person. And then of course, just at the 4th degree, at 4 degrees, it's that Cancer sign, and I kind of see Cancer as our roots, our history, all of the facts that we know. And so this all just went really into place as to why he ended up being the third-eyed raven compared to literally anybody else. And even having Mars conjunct that energy at 2 degrees, kind of saying like you will have to sacrifice your body to enhance your mind. And so it's like, leave your body behind and let your mind do the flying. And I think that was something that was definitely represented there. And then another 18 degrees retrograded Jupiter, saying he doesn't have the best of luck, but he's got some luck at that 8th house, once again bringing them into this point of transform, be transformed. Who don't come around these parts, okay? And so that's all we're going to do for Brandon. And then I'm going to go back and forth with Arya and Sansa just because they have such interesting characters. And I do believe that the charts I was able to find for them amplify those characters as well. To start, Sansa started when she was only 13. So what I did was I just took the time from John's birthday backwards to get us a 13-degree Aries Pluto in that fifth house. And so she draws all of her essential power from her ability to be a grown-up, basically. And, sometimes your hardest year is going to be that year. Oh, wow. Okay, so we do talk like the hardest year being in Libra. And so season 5, when she gets married, the hardest year of your life is Saturn. Season 5, she gets married, she's 18. It's the worst wedding of her life. She gets married twice, like back to back in a few weeks. Like it's a retrograde, so that's probably why she got married twice, because it literally retrograded over her Saturn and back and forth. And the energy of it, all right? But to digress and jump back into the more simple spaces of Sansa, we're looking at the sun and the moon being exactly new, 6 degrees in the 6th house. And then because her ascendant is in Scorpio, that means her descendant is at 6 degrees in Taurus, which kind of puts a whole lot of energy in that area of her life where she needs help and she needs to ask for help. The Virgo energy in her chart isn't as prevalent as it is in the other charts. And again, since George Martin is a Virgo sun, I wanted all of those planets to kind of take on those little intricate details within Virgo. And so Sansa, she was always being told, like, oh, you're not very bright. You show all your feelings, you show yourself. And, having a little bit of a temperament is kind of what sits right here with that Mercury in Aries. But then being just, soft girl, like, oh, this is me knitting. This is me sewing at 26 degrees, since that's the Taurus degree. So, always being so beautiful, so delicate, and being wise beyond her years, yet silenced behind men just because her feminine divine is sitting there in that position. And of course, also at 26 degrees, I have her masculine divine sitting in Cancer, kind of saying like everything I do for my family. She did a lot of traveling until she made it back home. And she also dealt with just, her own creativity, like when she made John something, actually it's like a nostalgic creativity is what I'm pulling here. Like when she made Winterfell while she was in the Vale, when she made John an outfit that looked like their dad's, well, his uncle, and et cetera, kind of just creating all of these different energies about her. Also that 6 degree, 6th house Virgo idea of perfection and how everyone's always calling her perfect, even in her 18-degree Saturn, just living this perfect life, being the perfect girl. And that's a lot of what Arya says to her and what Arya calls her. And I decided to kind of get a little crazy with Arya's chart. Like, for obvious reasons, I felt like Arya did a lot of traveling, and so it took everything in me not to make her a Sagittarius. But again, George Martin isn't a Sagittarius, and so I had to let that Aries energy run. And it was great because literally the first day I picked, that would have put her as like a spring baby, ended up having a Gemini moon, and it just felt right immediately. I didn't even have to tweak it. It was perfect upon the rest, because she says, these are my many faces, and she became a many faced man. She traveled a great distance to learn how to kill people, and then just being a master murderer, so to speak, with her Aries energy, even her Aries Pluto. She has this beautiful Aries selenium all sitting in her 8th house. And in that 8th house, she's just holding her strength, her power, her wisdom. Even her Jupiter sits at 8 degrees. And then her Saturn, oh, I love that story. Honestly, I'm going to pause on her Saturn just so I can talk about her planets a little more. So all of that just kind of shaping you up to be like, she's not afraid of death, yet somehow she's surrounded by death. She always walks in just minutes too late and witnesses the most horrific and horrible of things. what I thought was absolutely beautiful also here is that because her Aries in ninth house, or excuse me, at 9 degrees ended up being in the seventh house, it kind of still left her open to like the lovers that she takes on or the people that she loves or people who love her. They're never really there to hurt her or be aggressive to her. And then it also kind of leans in like, you know, they're manly men. And it also implies like her wanting to dress a little more masculine, wanting to dress like a traveler, like somebody's travel companion. And so I thought that had a lot of strength and a lot of beauty in it as well as, you know, her Mercury at 13 degrees. And though it's in the eighth house, I kind of see her more watching and observing rather than communicating, shouting and chit-chatting, etc. And that was some really interesting energy. And then I actually know in real time that John Jones and one of my really good friends who is a WWE, well, she's not WWE, but she's a wrestler, like they both have Mars in Leo. And so that's a little bit of strength that we're just not really ready to chit chat about. And hers being at the 10th degree, meaning that her strength will be her longevity, will be her longest space, will be where she guides her world. Sitting in the 11th house, that's community building, community opportunities. Again, you're either the individual or you're the group. I think that's how she's able to sneak up on people, be a little sneaky. And then that 8 by 8, almost like the Leo portal being open for Jupiter, just saying that she was destined to kind of be the killer of the king. Oh, it's kind of like the Kingslayer. Now I want to go run over here to the Kingslayer and see if he had a Kingslayer marking. No, just her. He had no Kingslayer. Well, no. And so just her Jupiter and her opportunity to kill the Night King is such a powerful move. And then if I jump down to her Saturn, I kind of read Scorpio and Pisces as, of course, life and death. And then 15 degrees is the sibling degree, as well as third house being the sibling degree. So she is the dead sibling, the lost sibling, the unfound sibling for the pretty much majority of the show. Nobody ever knows who she is or what she's doing, but we're sitting there with her every minute of the day. Like, no, she's fine. But nobody else knows that she's fine. And so there's that even a little sense of secretiveness. And then her father dying and her brother dying also terms of Scorpio and their life and death abilities to just create and remove and resuscitate. Her moon in the ninth house, again, that willingness to travel, that willingness to explore, and her midheaven in Gemini being a faceless man, it's her career. So give me just 1 second. I am talking as fast as possible because we're down to about 5 minutes left before I want to try to close this out. But as you can see, there are so many parallels and so many interesting understandings about everyone and everything and as they go and what they do. And so to also double back into Sansa's chart, there's a comment that John says when she's talking about Cersei, where it's like, wow, you know, you sound like you admire her. And because Cersei's moon, I'm the worst at drawing moons, but let's pretend that's the moon, is at 29 degrees in Aquarius. And then Sansa's Uranus is at 29 degrees in Aquarius. It's kind of saying like, you know, out of all of that rebellion, out of all of that chaos, you know, when she looks at herself in the mirror, she sees Cersei, because Cersei also has her ascendant right there as well. And so Cersei's ascendant and moon are conjunct Sansa's Uranus, which is another reason to just kind of pick on and fidget with, and, you know, I want to be the bully, I'm the bad guy, a lot of that Saturn energy. And I think that's really interesting just to observe and absorb. And I think that was all I had. I did want to take note that Sansa's Jupiter and Arya's moon are conjunct at 12 degrees. Oh, it's in for me. I didn't know I did that. And so those two being conjunct also kind of create this understanding, like, you know, you swing I was literally watching it earlier, and so like when Sansa tells Arya to kill Littlefinger, it's like you pass a sentence and I swing the sword, and it's their own comforts in these weird places and these weird positions that they are in, where they just feel welcomed amongst each other and accepted and appreciated, and the good energies. And then also Sansa and, well, I can talk about Sansa and Tyrion, both of them being new moon babies and kind of just being lumped together, but then having a lot of respect for each other and understanding for each other. That's there. And then with John, just all of their energies kind of flowing. I don't know. I get so carried away. I think I want to be done because I have been talking for about an hour now, and I have had an absolute blast looking at all of these made up charts and reading through them and giving you my reasoning why I read through them. Of course, I would love to do a part 2 and explore what more we can find in the chart, different ways to compare different things. Also, because I love looking at a full chart rather than just a planetary chart, addressing some of the different houses that are around, like, it's like because of where the rising and the descendant are, you can see where the family moves and what they're up to, even like the size of the houses everywhere, as well as other characters. And so please, if you can watch the whole thing, do. If you can't, press pause, come back later, and tell me what you think. And if we like it a lot, I'll do a part 2. If we don't like it that much, then I will not do a part 2, or maybe I'll just leave it to Twitter. But thank you so much for watching. And as always, anytime you want to book services with me, my website is in my bio, and it's super, super fun. All of my sessions are on Zoom, so you're welcome to record them when you use a laptop. And I'm so happy I had this chance to chat with you guys, talk to you about my favorite things, which are astrology and Game of Thrones. And I hope you learned something here. And if you didn't learn anything, hit rewind and watch it again because I just talked for an hour. Love y'all. Bye.